We just couldn't see it. All right, so let's call this meeting to order. I wanted to start with just a few things, just a few logistical things, just so that we all knew kind of where we're at. So in the absence of the president, the vice president presides, and that's where we're at right now. But our bylaws declare that we have to vote for new officers in the instance of a vacancy of an officer. So so then we should figure out at what point of the meeting we want to do that, and then make that happen as, however we need to do that. I think it probably makes more sense to do that towards the beginning of the meeting, or do that right after we we do our roll call. But that's really up to the board. The bylaws just state what we're supposed to do, not how we're supposed to do it. So does anybody have any preference for that? If you don't, then I'll probably just move forward with dealing with, we'll do the roll call, and then we'll go into an election for the standing president. Does that work for everybody?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So just for the record, we have David Mills as our county rep. We've got John Books. We've got Helen Muth, and we've got Chris McPherson. And I am here as well, J.R. Smith-Taku. We've got Patrick Knight for the city, and then Amanda St. John, who is the library director, present. So as per our bylaws, we have to do an election for president. This is where we would open the floor for nominations for that position. So if anybody has anything, throw it out there.
I would nominate J.R. Smith-Taku for president.
Okay.
I will second that. This is Chris.
Okay, cool. Yeah, for nominations, we don't need to second them. It's just the nomination that's stands. But thank you.
Sure.
Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I'm supposed to say it 3 times. Any other nominations? Okay, so nominations are closed then. We have one, and in the case that it's not a contested vote, then we actually just need a motion to approve, or motion to approve that position, and then we can move on to vice president. So does anybody have a motion to, I guess, to accept, to move me to president, I guess? It's weird to say.
I move that we accept Jay as president.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a second for that?
Yes, I'll second.
I think Helen was going to do it, but she was muted. I saw her mouth move before yours, Dave. So I guess I don't know how we'd deal with that. So Helen, if you want to unmute yourself, you can second that. I think we need to get the audio.
It doesn't look like Zoom.
There we go. We got you.
Do it? Are we okay?
Yep.
Okay. Did you even hear me say hello to everyone?
No.
Earlier? Oh, sorry.
No. I think we must have heard Chris.
No, I heard Chris, but I had already. Amanda said hello, Helen, and I said hello to everybody. And
funny.
Okay. Well, anyway, I do second John's motion that Jay be moved to president.
Okay. So motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Well, wait, no, we have to do this roll call. I have to call on each of you individually to do this. So I'll start with Dave. I'm just gonna go how it is on my screen. So Dave, what's your vote?
Aye.
John, your vote?
Aye.
Helen, your vote?
Aye.
Chris, your vote?
Aye.
Okay, and I will accept the nomination and the position, but I will abstain from voting. So, okay, so we got that taken care of. So now the next one is to do a vice president, or someone to do this if I'm not around. So are there any nominations for that position?
I would like to nominate myself in that position to fill in whenever you're not around. I think I can do it. I've done it a couple of times before.
Okay, there's a nomination. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Okay, so nominations are closed. Just like the last one, would somebody be willing to make a motion to the effect of Helen being the vice president?
So moved.
Okay, so there's a motion by Mills. Is someone going to second that?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Books. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Oh wait, no.
Aye.
I'm so used to this. Sorry, I have to go around and do it person to person. Dave,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Helen,
Aye.
Chris. Well, I guess yeah. Chris,
Aye. Aye.
and I vote aye as well. As they say, the ayes have it. So we have our officers rectified for right now. So thank you for putting up with that. Just another update before we get into the agenda, and this is part of the director's report as well, that the county has or will be shortly advertising for the opening in the county, and the city will be doing that shortly as well. So we obviously have no visitors. That's on our agenda. And so then we move to the consent agenda. Consent agenda with 4 items, which is this agenda, the minutes from the previous 2 meetings, because we didn't get the February ones on the last meeting, and then 3 rounds of bills to be paid. I would like to add to the agenda for tonight in new business. I got to look at my notes here. I made a bunch of notes here. I can't remember what I was going to add now. Amanda, what were we talking about? We were talking about adding something to the agenda.
Slate of officers for sure.
Okay, well so we've taken care of that. But then definitely we should talk about adding to new business, like board operations, like how the board operates, especially during an emergency. So we can have a conversation between the 5 of us, hopefully soon 7 of us, that will that we can figure out what works best and how we can continue to move forward. So that's I asked to add that to new business. Is there anything else, or is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I would like to recommend a few changes to the minutes for March 23. Would you like to pull it?
I think that probably makes sense, yeah. So we'll pull that March 23 minute. So then we have the agenda as amended, the minutes from the 24th, and then the bills. Does somebody feel strongly about making a motion to approve that consent agenda? If not, go ahead.
No, I'll just move that we accept it.
Okay, so there's a motion by John. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second from Chris McPherson. And any further discussion on that? Hearing none, then we'll go to a vote. Dave?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well, so that carries. So we'll move the consent agenda aside and we will take up the minutes for the March 23rd meeting. So go ahead with your amendments, Amanda.
Thank you. There are just two sections that I wanted to look at. Underneath the director's report, it said that I would draft a resolution explaining the library response for the board to consider at a special meeting. Actually, the draft was delegated to Judy Johnson. So we would just change St. John to Johnson.
I would move that we do that. I did observe that, but I wasn't sure how it had worked. But that's what I remembered, that it was Judy Johnson.
The second thing that I'm looking at is on the second page under communications. It says that I presented a memo that the Grand Marais Library had been awarded the 5-star status for the 11th year. I actually, in my memo, I announced that we didn't qualify for scoring because we didn't have Wi-Fi data to enter the scoring.
Oh,
That is correct. I remember that as well because I was taken by that.
huh. I must have picked that up from some random place and put it in there for good feelings.
It was probably in the paper that way.
It could have been. Is that all, Amanda?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. So Helen, does your motion still stand for the amendment of the minute?
Yes, for both of those. I read the minutes we got them early, and so I read them early, and I hadn't forgotten the one about Judy, but I did forget the one that had to do with 11 years.
Okay.
I did forget that one, sorry. But I would move that we accept these changes, yes.
Okay, so there's a motion by Moose. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, second by Mills. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Dave, your vote.
Aye.
John, your vote.
Aye.
Helen, your vote.
Aye.
Chris, your vote.
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. So that carries. So we have gotten through that. So the next thing is the Library Friends Liaison Report. So I don't know if Chris, you have
I have a very brief point.
Okay, go ahead.
The library friends have been inactive.
Okay. That's fair. Okay, so then we'll move on to the ELS. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
Well, I thought that Chris was trying to say something again, but maybe it was just static on my line.
Oh, no. Sorry. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope.
All right, so then we'll move on to the ALS report. So that would be you, Helen, I believe.
Yes, that's the reason why I was thinking perhaps you were calling on me. I highly recommend that you check in with the ALS information. There's a lot going on there. Sometimes I get 3 emails a day with loads of information, and they're keeping up with all of the COVID-19 information as it relates to the library, both statewide and regionally, nationally. So I think Amanda's getting everything that I'm getting, but if you guys aren't getting some of it, it would be good for you to look in there. And it is entirely too much for anyone to report to you, but it's great stuff.
Okay, very good. Yeah, and I've been getting some of those emails that have been, and I've been getting stuff from the state too that talks about all of the different ways that you can plan and the different theories and how you can, make your workplace safe and all that stuff. And you're totally right, Helen. It's a lot of information. So that's definitely going to be part of our conversation going forward to how we can implement those things and make it manageable and understandable for people. So thank you for that. So now we will move to the director's report. So we have the written director's report in your packet, which covers a number of topics, and then Amanda has a couple of other things. So take it away.
Mostly what I want to talk about today is just kind of the recovery plan and next steps. We've all been working really hard to figure out how to continue to open up library services in a way that honors public health as well as the governor's stay-at-home order. So far, just to recap, we've been emptying the drop box, and this is a big deal because it requires a quarantine procedure. Because the library books and materials, the plastic can hold the virus for up to 3 days. So we're just trying to do everything as carefully as possible. And right now our quarantine is a 7-day process. We also are offering customer service by phone, helping people navigate their account, importantly, helping them access digital content. And that's one of the segments that I wanted to bring back from last month's meeting. So at last month's meeting, I discussed with you a maneuver I wanted to try, which is to encourage access to ebooks by helping support that collection. So the Arrowhead Library System manages our Overdrive collection, which is our ebook and e-audio collection. And their budget is limited each year. They do what they can. I think it's $100,000 that they contribute to make this thing happen for everyone in the Arrowhead region. And then from there, in order to the collection grow. Okay, so here's the piece. Like the first 5 years they had this collection, it grew 20% in usage every year for 5 years. With the moving into COVID-19, they saw a 12% increase in usage. And we're encouraging all of our customers to go there because this is the one thing we know we can offer that is completely safe for public health and also with social distancing. So after that money is spent, ALS doesn't really have a lot of extra leeway to do more with the collection. And I've learned that $30,000 have been donated by other libraries. A lot of that donation is coming from the crossover funds that ALS provides to us. So they give us crossover funds. We received $4,610. We can use that money for designated purposes, including purchasing more books, supporting programming, supporting conference attendance, things like this. And right now, programs are shut down. There aren't a lot of conferences happening, and we're not really able yet to circulate materials. So I'm recommending that we help support that collection by reallocating some of that crossover money back to ALS. If we provided them, for example, $3,000, let's talk about the audio collection, because at the last meeting, the board discussed how that audiobook collection felt kind of small and really liked to see it. You really wanted to see it grow. An audiobook can cost $60 to $110 a piece. So if we dedicated $3,000 to that, you would be purchasing approximately 35 to 40 audiobooks or ebooks, whatever their selector chooses to purchase, to go back into the collection for everyone, including our customers.
And that money would just be an allocation of the monies that we had gotten from ALS, correct? Right. So that would be.
It has designated uses, and supporting the digital collections is one of those uses.
Okay, Dave?
So we can't request audiobooks exclusively. It has to just be electronic, and it's going to be either e or audio based on the selector. Is the selector a system or a person or?
It's a group.
A group.
It is a group. There is a list, and probably the people are identified. I don't recall all of them, but I do know that there's a person from Virginia, and there are a couple of people from Duluth. But that's just something that I picked up in reading, not that I tried particularly to remember those people. But it is a group.
And I think Steve was in that group.
Could be.
Now, the other question I had was, Amanda, you said $100,000?
You know that?
Or, I mean, I don't need to.
Yeah, if I heard it correctly, it's $100,000 that's purchasing the contract that allows them to offer the service, and then and to offer some of the materials in the service.
Okay.
And I also wanted to go back to your first question about the selection. It is a human selection process. ALS did say that they have no trouble selecting books. So if we give them money, they can spend it. And then I want to go back to the part about allocation. So this is a consolidated pool of money. We can't tell them that they have to spend it on audiobooks. We can't tell them they have to spend it in the month of May during COVID-19. It will be expended by the end of the year. And I also want to come then, that reminded me also that ALS is so serious about trying to bolster this collection right now. They know how valuable it is. They have reallocated a lot of their budget to this already. So they are trying to pursue the state to see if they can get even more funding.
Yes.
But I mean, so I think they're doing everything that they can, and it's just.
As one example,
the other thing that we should say, could I say something? The other thing is that if we were to purchase, we being Grand Marais Public Library, on a one-to-one basis, we would get X number of books. But because this money would go into a pool and they would be purchasing a wide swath of materials, actually we would get much more bang for our bucks, if you want to say that, than we would if we purchased things individually ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the food shelf concept. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, just as an example of how ALS is moving funds around, they're taking gas money since the bookmobile can't be used. They're transferring gas money to put into the ebooks or the electronic equipment, not the equipment, but the services, which I thought was pretty great.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Dave, did you have a comment as well?
More questions. Yeah. So, is when ALS purchases the electronic materials, that's a purchase, right? It's not a something that will expire. Right.
Ebooks, if I'm understanding this correctly, because I'm not ALS, I believe that ebooks are metered, which means you can only circulate so many times and they will time out. An ebook is significantly cheaper. They are about 10 in the $10 range to purchase those. And then I don't know how the audio books work.
But generally, I think these are an annual license. These are an annual license rather than like that's part of the problem with ebooks is it's not like you have one on the shelf and you can keep it there forever if you so choose. Ebooks it's a license for annual use. Yeah, but that's the way it works.
The best comparison that I've seen for ebooks is that it's like buying a license for software. And so then you have that license for so many uses of that software, and then on different devices, and then it if it's on an annual basis, then that's how they renew it basically. So does that answer your question, Dave?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, you guess. So Amanda, you have a suggestion that we reallocate $3,000 to this. Is that what you're requesting, or is that just a number that you picked out because it's what we have available?
I'm looking at the amount of money that is available and thinking we should keep some here. And I'm then giving you the $3,000 number as an idea of what your money would buy.
Okay. So that money that we get from ALS for that, as that credit, basically, how much is that in total, and what do we usually use that money for?
The total amount is $4,610. In 2019, Steve allocated $2,500 to the overdrive collection.
Oh,
And then from then, I don't know how else he would have used the money. I'd have to go back and look at our records.
okay.
So the idea is consistent with what we've done in the past, in the recent past.
Okay. Well, does anyone have any strong feelings about that? I mean, that seems like it's a pretty reasonable request. Any further discussions on that, or anybody feeling?
I would like to make a motion that we do, as Amanda has requested or suggested. She hasn't requested. I would like to move that we do transfer or return, what word do you want to use there, $3,000 for the overdrive services.
Okay. Yeah. So reallocate or return. I mean, I guess it's as long as we know where it's going to the overdrive services. That's probably the kicker. Okay. So there's a motion by Muth. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'll second it.
Second.
Okay. John beat you, Chris, but we'll get you next time. So motion by Muth, second by Books. Any further discussion on this?
If I may, separate discussion, but I would like to learn more about, and maybe Helen, you can find out more about this, just about the selection process, the selector committee.
Okay.
I'm just curious.
One piece of information that I can contribute as my conversation comes back is that because the audiobook collection is growing faster, the demand is growing faster than the ebooks, the selectors are being asked to focus on developing that collection. But then that is being balanced with the demand for ebooks and also the fact that they can get so much more for less. Do you have a particular point of interest you'd like that I could specifically ask?
Just about the process, how the selector, I love that term, how the selector selects, and then if there's any way we can have input into that.
You can have input. One way that you can have direct input is by using the overdrive collection, and when you find a material, or if you even think they should have something in their collection, there's a feature to recommend it. You can go on hold. I think you have an option to link your recommendation to an actual request. You can also just, when the book or audiobook becomes available, you can return it. And ALS does encourage you, if you would like to do that, to please make recommendations in that way.
Yeah, I think they stopped listening to me because I do that a lot.
Oh. Okay, so
yeah, that's all. That's all.
We still have a motion on the table. So the motion to reallocate $3,000 to the ALS e-services. Final comments? Okay, Dave, your vote?
Aye.
John, your vote?
Aye.
Helen, your vote?
Aye.
Chris, your vote?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Okay, thank you for that suggestion, Amanda. I hope that really helps them develop that cadre of services. I know I've been using them a lot lately, which is really very good. Do you have anything else for your report?
I have two more pieces to the report. The first piece is that at the February meeting, the board directed me to explore the possibility of offering a Read Brave-like program. This is a program that was designed by St. Paul Public Library, and that it is like a community read that provides maybe 3 books so that they're age specific, so that the whole community can discuss a book or a theme together. I mentioned that the Friends of Cook County were looking at doing a community read, and the coronavirus put those conversations on hold. However, the Friends of the Friends of St. Paul Public Library, acting as the Minnesota Center for Books, is offering a One Book, One Minnesota community read for the entire state, trying to build community during this time. And that book is called Because of Winn-Dixie. It's been written by Kate DiCamillo, and we will be participating. So we're making the link to the digital copies of the downloadable book available through our website. Ann Passes is going to be speaking with Kate DiCamillo this Friday at 5:15 on the Roadhouse. And then also the program will allow everyone to participate in a statewide virtual discussion with the author in May. And we don't have details about that yet, but I think it's a very nice gesture to make during this time to just to get that wheel churning.
Okay.
Okay. And then the next piece, the final piece of my report is that, as I mentioned, we're working towards opening services back up. And we have developed a pickup window program. So as opposed to curbside, where staff come out and put materials in your trunk for you, you would approach the building. In the foyer, one of the windows would be open. We're going to have a frame inset with plexiglass to prevent the spread of droplets from breathing. And also we can pass the books through the bottom of the window. At first, this would be a very limited service. We want to clear the backlog of requests and holds that have been placed over the last month, and then we could start looking at what it would take to offer more phone service or to add extra days. I'm thinking about offering it on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, which would give staff a day to recover and pack new books before the next public pickup. So it would just be a starting point. And I'm wondering how supportive you all feel of this. I'm also wanting to know, I was planning on offering it, let's say May 6th, which would be after the stay-at-home order, but we don't know yet whether that order is going to be lifted.
Okay. So does anybody have any thoughts about that? It sounds like that window idea combined with the 7-day quarantine for the books when they were returned would check most of the boxes for the safety of the materials. Is that correct, Amanda?
As far as we're informed, it does. Yeah, the CDC is only recommending a 24-hour quarantine, frankly, and librarians reading between the lines feel that 3 days is appropriate. We're doubling that for the return of the materials. And so any of the books that are being passed through the window, first of all, right now, they are only coming from our collection. They're not coming from a courier. We have no courier service. So we're just pushing that physical collection, in this case, out to the community. And those books would have been quarantined for at least 7 days.
Okay. And do we?
And how?
Go ahead, Chris.
I was just trying to find out about staff safety and interacting with the public. My guess, it sounds like they're behind a plexiglass thing and they put their books through a slot, and then the person on the other side pulls them out of the slot. Is that correct?
Yep. It would be like getting an ice cream cone.
And Amanda, when those books are returned, to the Dropbox. They wouldn't be given to a staff. They'd be dropped to the Dropbox, and then those would be quarantined for 7 days.
The materials that are being returned to the Dropbox are being collected 6 days a week. Staff are bringing them into a hot zone space where they sit for 24 hours. So as soon as we touch those materials, we wash our hands with soap and water for 20 seconds and leave the materials sit still. After the 24 hours, we're relocating them to a place where they can sit longer.
And it's 7 days?
No check-in process until they go through the quarantine.
Okay. My point that I wanted to check is that through the plexiglass, this is only the books being passed from the staff. These are clean books passed through a clean hole to the patron, and then that book would be taken away, read, and then returned to our Dropbox.
Yes.
Okay, and then it would go. So it will be a very slow process, but of having a book on hold and getting it back again, but not as slow as it is now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Amanda, if people were using the online service for this, would they just place the hold for a book and then it would show up for your staff that's a book that someone's requested, and then you can just check it out, put it through the hole in the foyer, and then away we go. Is that kind of what you're anticipating?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about that, but honestly, I think that's pretty. It seems very cautious, but also seems like it checks all the boxes for me anyway. I don't know. I don't think that we need to make any motion or anything like that for this, because this is Amanda's deal for trying to get
Right.
to get the service back going. If we have any suggestions or concerns or anything like that, we can certainly bring those up. But I mean, from what you said, Amanda, it seems like you've got this relatively well thought out, and we won't know how it'll go until we try. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I have a question about people coming and getting the books and keeping the 6 feet distance or wearing masks. I have that. I understand about the staff being safe. I'm not sure about someone coming to pick up a book. Are they going to have an assigned time, like whenever you get your groceries here in Grand Marais, or that you wouldn't have a group of people there? And right now we have the lockdown, but then it could go that we would have a situation where no more than 10 people could congregate at any location, and they would have to be 6 feet apart and wearing masks. So we don't know what the next step will be.
You are right to note that there is a risk involved. That as soon as we start to open service back up, person-to-person service with the public, there will be a risk. So I'd like to believe that with everyone in the community experiencing curbside programs already and wearing their masks already, there's a level of expectation that they need to behave a certain way. There's going to be a sign at the window. We can communicate as we're telling people how to come pick up their books. To do these, continue social distancing, stay back if you see too many people at the window.
Will you have tape?
We can do tape on the sidewalk, definitely, to flag people and alert them. I'd like to also make a sign for our Dropbox so that we're flagging people early. Put your books here. Don't return them to staff.
Mm-hmm.
We're not planning to do an appointment basis. I just think that we're inside of the building. We're also trying to do social distancing. And so we're trying to reduce as much We're trying to keep how many staff are in the building to a minimum. We're trying to reduce the phone traffic to a minimum. And we're trying to increase the success of someone being able to pick up their books while they're in town. So I'm not planning for an appointment based because I think that it will be problematic. Some of the other libraries are reporting that when they do an appointment program that someone might be late and then the books are checked out, and then the next person, this person tries to insert themselves and it just backs everything up.
Okay.
Did I answer each of your questions?
Yes, you answered my questions. I'm not sure that I feel totally confident about that particular part of it, but I think that what you have control over within the library, I think you have. I mean, I feel confident about that part. It's just it's the interaction with the public, which of course is why you're doing all of it anyway. So, and I do feel uneasy.
So I do think it's fair to say that we're willing to try and we're willing to believe that the best outcome will occur most of the time. And if we see that it is problematic and there is no adherence to these standards, we can shut it down.
Mm-hmm.
We can always pull back and say that didn't work and we're not taking this risk. So I do want to know. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Just going to say I have two reactions. One is, number one, you are listening very closely to what's going on in other libraries and adjusting your plans because of that. So that's really important. And the other thing is you are relying on Cook County to behave themselves the way they need to. And you can control that by watching it. And if it works, then it works. And if it doesn't, as you say, you can shut it down. So I feel comfortable with the trial. And I think it will be really interesting to see how it goes, but you'll be able to judge the success or the non-success very quickly and very closely. So I feel comfortable about it.
So I just want to make sure also, how comfortable is the board with me moving forward if the mayor does not lift the stay-at-home order? I am asking this because it takes a week to promote this. Sorry, yeah, thank you. Yeah. So I would need to start promoting this tomorrow to be able to offer it on May 6th.
I would be much happier if you waited for the governor's order, because to back off would be problematic as well. So you're following what the governor has to say. When the governor makes up his mind, then we can go.
Dave?
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%, is to follow the governor's guidelines. And I really appreciate how much thought you've put into this. And I think it sounds like a real good system. And I fully appreciate the ability to dial it back if necessary as well. There's two ideas I had that are kind of related. One is the return box. That handle itself is a potential vector.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a way we can just have a push-in slot for a box, if you know what I mean.
Do we not?
It's I believe it's a pull. Don't you pull the handle on the? Or am I thinking of a different drop?
Look, but I think that we actually have a slot, and and we're also cleaning that with soap and water, and then through disinfectant once a day.
Very good.
Now that I remember, Dave, I think that there's a slot that kind of slaps down when you look through, but there's no handle to pull on. You can just push the book in.
Okay, I must be thinking of a different drop. The other thought I had, which is actually a bit of dialing up, and I think it's good to be cautious, but for those who don't have access, just sliding an iPad out to browse our selection might be a way to dial it up when that time comes, but I don't think there's any need to rush that. But an iPad is something that's easily disinfected, and then would enable people, if social distancing is being adhered to walk up and ask for the iPad and find a selection or browse or whatever, and then slide it back and have it be disinfected. But otherwise, I think it's a great plan. Thank you for working on it.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else have thoughts on it?
I think that handle needs to be washed more than once a day. I don't think that's near efficient or sufficient.
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 Right.
Maybe swab it down 2 or 3 times with hydrogen peroxide or something or other to keep it fresher.
Right.
Okay.
Really simple.
Yeah. Any other thoughts?
Is there a possibility of just having some cleaners there that people can do it for themselves?
I'm not too comfortable with that when we're talking about using bleach and having children in our community. But, and I think disinfectant wipes, when I was thinking originally, when this thing first got started, we were looking at disinfectant wipes for everyone to be able to wipe their own computer station down. But those are really hard to get.
Yeah.
So I think
Yes,
this
that
really does.
is a,
I think this really is a staff piece.
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, I just remembered how difficult it is to get the sanitizer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel pretty comfortable with it. Honestly, I'm pleased to see what I perceive as an effective plan to at least get the bare bones of the service back to the community. So that's really great. I do think that's I'm in favor of it. I think that's just fine. So unless somebody else has some other take on it, I think that you've got your support. So Dave, yeah, go ahead.
One other thing is just, communication is key. So getting this out there, getting the process out there, and really drilling it in. That's all.
Okay.
I would like to second that. I think communication, we just can't have too much of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Very cool. Anything else for your director's report there?
No, thank you.
Okay, so then when we get to committee reports, this might actually be a good segue to talk about how we're going to do business until the emergency is done, and even after the emergency is done, because we have the 3 standing committees that we use to get things done. But with the emergency, I feel like getting those meetings organized is going to be more difficult, and to have them be substantive meetings is going to be more challenging, due to the fact that we all have to, we won't be able to have all of the information right dead in front of us unless we can, all get some assistance from Patrick about how to share screens and to walk through different pieces of information and to work on meeting etiquette over an online meeting like this. So that makes me want to ask a question about how we do business as far as each of these committees is concerned. Because example, the budget, typically what happens for the budget process, and that's one that we said that the budget, we need to start talking about this. Typically the way that we do this is that the finance committee, which it currently is Dave and myself, because Judy was the other representative on that committee, that they would get together and meet a number of times until the budget, which was prepared by the director, is gone through enough to feel like it's close to a final draft. At which point it's brought to the rest of the board, and then the board has time to consider it and to make final adjustments before adopting it. so the question that I have is, does it make sense to continue doing that? Because we'll probably, with 2 vacancies on the board, we'll have to probably redo our committees too if we want to keep operating under that same structure. Otherwise, for now, we could just have the board operate as the finance committee, have Amanda prepare the budget, and then have us all discuss it at a board meeting, or at several board meetings, however many board meetings it takes, for us to get to a final draft on it. That is a bit more rudimentary than how we've done it in the past, but I do think that in the past couple of years, as far as how the budgeting process has gone, I believe that most of the conversation in those budget meetings, at least what I seem to remember, is, trying to predict the future and trying to minimize certain prices for a little bit off of this, a little bit off of that. Make sure we're maintaining these certain set expectations for our collection and for our staffing, and that's pretty much where it goes to. So that's my question about the budget, because I know that during the emergency, the council is not taking on a lot of new projects. We're just trying to keep ourselves afloat, and trying to keep all of the services going. And that is going to have an impact on the budget of the library for next year, because I think it would be naive to say that we're not going to see an impact in the funding structures for the library. I know, Dave, you guys have been working quite a bit on predicting what's going to happen with with property tax, and the city as well. I mean, we're predicting that we could lose 20% of our annual income off of the liquor store and the campground, which that's a lot of money. So I almost would feel more comfortable if we were able to tackle the budgetary conversation as a whole group, so that we could get the whole conversation and different perspectives from each of you on the board in a time like this. So I don't know what everybody's take is on that, but that goes in with the conversation about the upcoming finance committee meetings that we have to figure out. So, anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think it's an excellent idea. Part of the reason would be that I expect the conversation would have to be replicated when it comes to the whole board anyway. So since we're so small, I think we can be nimble and do it all at once. That's my thought.
My thought is similar insofar as the discussion of it, but there's a considerable amount of preliminary information that's needed from the city to know what the just basic expenses of staff and our utilities and so forth. You can use last year's budget for a way of using it as a model, but under our circumstances now, we may have to do some estimations in which I personally don't feel capable of making those. I could see a balance between things, but I do think that we're going to need a lot of guidance from the city and from other individuals other than the board.
And I believe we'll still get that. Helen. I think that the city is working on budget and finance pretty much exclusively at this point. Like that's really the only, just about the only thing that we're working on. We're trying to keep the water running. We're trying to keep the lights on. We're making sure we don't run out of money. Yeah. So those those budget proposals and predictions for next year as far as what the insurance rates would be and other expenses that show up on the line items in the
Right.
employee part of that. Those numbers will still come from the city, and I anticipate that we'll probably see those sometime in June. Like in a more or less finalized manner. But that's according to how things have worked in the past, which is really hard for me right now because I really like it when there's consistency in systems, and this is not feeding any of those parts of my life. So I think that, yeah, you're right, Helen, we do need a lot more information from a lot of different places. And I think that between Amanda and the board itself, we can get that information from the city. So, Dave, your comment, question, side remark?
Well, I think the point of these committees is that we don't have a quorum. When we have a quorum, we can't just meet whenever we want. We need to post it with adequate time, and we need to have it available to the public and all that stuff. So when we have a quorum, we can't be as nimble. And
Right.
sometimes when you have more people involved, you have a more substantive discussion, but it gets longer. It gets up much longer, and so I'm very open to involving the whole board for all of these committees, but I'm just putting out a cautionary,
And I think you make a
Thank
really.
you for that reminder, Dave.
Oh, go ahead, Chris.
No, I was just going to say thank you for the reminder. I'm still not quite into this quorum open meeting stuff. So, yes, you're absolutely right. It changes what I said quite a bit.
And I think, Chris, there is some validity to what you said. I mean, when we talk about these things at an actual board meeting, then there won't be as much rehashing. Like, we won't have to rehash everything that's happened in a committee meeting so that the board is understanding it. The whole board will understand all of the progress that's made from the beginning, which with past budgets, and with past budgets, there hasn't been a lot, because we kind of had these patterns of, we're going to invest this much into the collection, we're going to have this much for staffing, this is the FTE that we want to support for our staff time, and this is what that's going to cost. And so then, and we know what our increase levels are. We can increase up to 5% and have that be automatically approved, or is it 3%? I think it might
5%.
be 5%. So those kinds of the parts of the budgetary situation, I don't have much trouble with. It's just, for me, Dave, what I keep thinking about is having, like, two of us, which would, unless we redo the committees, would be you and me and Amanda, sitting down and talking about all of the potential shortcomings and whatnot. And I know for a fact that John and Helen and Chris have other information that would be useful for that discussion. Will it take longer? Yeah, I'm sure it will. But will it really take longer if we have to have those conversations two or three times to kind of rehash and go over the numbers again? I view this as being a bit of a special case, in that, like, we're probably going to have to cut more money than we want to, if we want to really be honest about it, or we have to either maintain the level that we're at, and that's going to cost money too, because expenses will certainly go up over the course of the year. Yeah, Dave?
You're absolutely right. This is unique circumstances. We're also currently in a unique position. We have a new director. We have a vacancy in assistant director. The assistant director is a relatively new position. beyond that, I'm sure there's other cuts we could make, but I don't. I think the purpose of the committees still stands, and it's up to each committee to have solid ground to bring to the board. But again, I'm very open to having the whole board discuss it. But I see some
Maybe we could do a sort of a hybrid here. Maybe there does need to be a meeting of the minds, but since each of you and Amanda, I'm saying now Amanda and you, Dave, and Jay, you all have access to some information that neither John, Chris, nor I have, and maybe one meeting, and that would, of the three of you, maybe you could get it to a point that the rest of us could come in on. And if we're not thinking of the city having their documentation ready until June, maybe we'll move slower, or it may take us a little bit longer. But we are now going to be meeting. We have May meeting and then the June meeting.
Mm-hmm.
In that 8 weeks, perhaps the three of you could meet. And then when you came in June, we would have more information and we could add what we feel. And then it's still not ready. It doesn't necessarily have to go to the city. I know we've gone first to the city, being first. We go to the city first, and we also try to be one of the first at the city. But I think I personally think that the committees do have a purpose. They have a very important purpose of getting the ball rolling, as opposed to having the whole board trying to initiate and move along that way. I don't think we would. I don't think we would have us. We'd have to take a lot of May's meeting, and maybe still yet not be ready for June's meeting. Or you guys may have to have your meeting between the May and June meeting, if you wanted, another scenario. But I do think like whenever we have a policy that we have to make a decision on, a lot of legwork has to be done before it's presented to the board. Even though it might have been initiated from the board. But it takes Amanda's expertise, and it takes the research of the people who are on the committee to bring forth how this form should finally be. And then Amanda, in her great English forms, puts it in so we all understand it.
Okay, yeah, John's got something to say. Thanks for your perspective on that, Helen. Go ahead, John.
I don't think it'd take that much longer, and I think it's critical at this time, given what's going on here and having to make cuts, that it'd be good to have the whole board involved in those discussions. It'll take longer, so what? How much longer? An extra meeting? That's fine.
Well, here's a question for the board then too. Reading the conversation that we've had here, because we're kind of all over the board, if you were, for how people are reading into this. I feel like right now in April, we really don't have a lot of information, and we're not going to get a lot of information if we give between this meeting and our next meeting. If we give that time to Amanda and I can push the city too to try and get some more accurate predictive numbers about what the 2021 expenses will be. then at our next meeting, then we can make up a, at least have more of a plan for how we're going to discuss the budget. I understand like what you guys are saying, Dave and Helen. What you're saying is that having that first little crunch work done before it comes to the board. I think I see the wisdom of that too. But I would like to see the majority of the conversation happen with all five of us right now, just because I feel like we're gonna miss something, or there's gonna be some kind of a conversation that we have to rehab, which I'm fine with. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. But just for efficiency's sake, so if that's okay with you guys, I think that we can request that Amanda work on gathering some of that information for the 2021 budget, as far as like predictions and stuff like that for what the expenses will be, because Kim down at City Hall will probably have a good number of those ideas. At least we know what the staff expense is going to be. We just don't know what the insurance expense is going to be. So if we can start moving on that, then by the May meeting, we can be in a position where we have at least updated the 2020 budget somewhat, and then that gives us something to start looking at. I think that that's totally fine, because for the city doesn't start talking about 2021 budget until September. So we've got time. We've got plenty of time, and honestly, once everything reopens, if everything reopens, there's going to be a bit of a backlog of people seeking services. I think it's going to be a bit of a mess for for a little bit of time. So does that sound like a plan for everybody, or should we work on getting a okay, so I'm seeing some thumbs. All right. That's nice. It's really nice actually to see the thumbs. Chris, did you say something?
Did I say thumbs up? Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Amanda, does that sound reasonable? I mean, does that sound like something that you can at least ask the question and get more information for the board? If you find out that that's not possible, like if Kim tells you that's just not possible, then you can reach out to the board and we can start making other plans, as far as like putting together a committee meeting if we need to or something.
I can definitely follow up with you. I do want to make sure, because of Dave's comment about the assistant director, I know I mentioned this in a little check-in email to everyone, but I want to make sure everybody knows that I've reposted the assistant director's position, and we're looking at May 8th as a closing date to maybe start reviewing applications. Okay, thanks.
Dave?
I didn't mean to scare. I'm sorry I even spoke the words that.
Oh no, it's
that's
okay.
where we could cut. But I just brainstorming and desperate times.
Perfect. I just want to make sure we're both on the same page.
Yes, thank
Okay,
you.
great.
The thing I did want to say though is just so that we're all on the same page here as well. Again, not to scare. The latest that I've heard regarding the COVID peak is July 13th for the state, more like mid-August for Cook County.
Mhm.
So that's a long ways away still. And that a lot can happen in between now and then.
Mm-hmm.
And that can change so much based on all of our, all of our habits and all of our actions and our neighbors' actions and all that. So just as we, continue all of our processes to keep kind of those times in mind of where we are as a society. I mean, the budget talks of September, it started making me think like, oh, what else is going on around then? You know, we'll be at the county level, we'll be hitting it a little harder in July. And that's kind of when things are going to start getting really real. So,
Okay, that's good perspective to keep on that. Okay, so are we good with that? We'll move on that tack, and we'll see how we can continue. It doesn't look like we have any communications. We don't have anything listed under unfinished business. So then we'll move to new business. Let's take care of the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation check first. This was, we had put this on the agenda to be brought back so that we can talk about what are we going to do with it, right, Amanda? I mean, maybe you want to take and explain a little bit more in detail for that, but that's my take on it.
So the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation is one of the places we're investing our money or have our money. And each year they give us a check. And it's my understanding that the history of the board has been to discuss what to do with that check. Because I think what's been happening is it's part of the plan to move money to, or maybe I have this wrong. We're moving things away from Duluth into St. Paul. I might have it wrong. But Judy had said, bring this check to the board and ask how you'd like to invest it. It's $1,144.86 from St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation.
That is the correct way that I understand it as well, that we're moving away from the Duluth Superior Foundation and moving towards the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. So go ahead.
Excuse me. I think part of the discussion was whether we felt that we wanted to use the money. I believe that our general approach to this has been to reinvest it in the St. Paul. And when it was in Duluth, we reinvest there. We can't take our money out of Duluth. We can take the check, but the check that they would give us, we could put it into the St. Paul. But this with the St. Paul would be just reinvested. But as I recall, the discussion was around the possibility of maybe we would need money to do a one book read, to have that type of thing done by our library friends. And maybe we would need to help support purchasing materials so that anyone who wanted a book or to read, and that's how I remember the discussion around that check. It was left up in the air, and that's why we're here to discuss it again, whether there are other thoughts of what we want to do with it.
Right. And so that conversation happened at the February meeting when we talked about the community read. I do remember that. And the community read conversation, aside from the St. Paul One Book, One Minnesota thing, the Friends community read, their programming is on hold. So I can't, what I've done with this check, because I've been holding it for a little while, is I've just deposited it in the 215, and we can move that money around when we're ready. Perhaps we could just keep it there until we're able to talk to the Friends.
It's keeping it in cash is a more conservative route right now, which might not be a terrible idea, because then because then we can use it for gaps in programming expenses that we might end up with, or it could just be added liquidity. If we want to continue going towards the investment side of things with it, then it based on our prior conversations, the appropriate thing would be to put it back into the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation. So I think that unless somebody else can come up with another idea, I think that those are to me, those seem like the two options that we have kind of facing us, as to whether we want to reinvest it the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation, or keep it in the 215 for future projects that we might.
I would like to make a motion that we just reinvest it. At least it'll be, if it gets voted down, at least we'll know to do something different.
Okay, there's a motion to reinvest the check from the St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation in the St. Paul, Minnesota Foundation. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yeah, the only thing I would discuss is that considering we don't know exactly, we're just talking about the budget, we don't know what's going to happen. What limitations are on this money, and is that we can get at it if we really need it, right? Yeah.
We can get at it if we really need it. There are some limits on how much we can pull out each year, but hopefully we wouldn't need to pull it all out in 1 year. I think that the library is postured in a pretty good place, that we have the dual funding source of the city and the county. So the possibility that we would really get hung out to dry is pretty low. But we do have the ability to draw, a certain amount out of each of the funds that we have to keep the library, going if we need to. So putting this money back in the St. Paul and Minnesota Foundation is not, it's not destroying the liquidity of that money. It's just not as liquid as if we had it in our account. So that's it.
I think, as I recall, it has to do with what you plan to do with it. It isn't like it isn't your money, but it isn't like that you can do just anything when you take it out. You have, as I recall, it's under a sense of a project, which if it's a project trying to keep your library working, I think that's a project, and probably under the circumstances would be legitimate to get any funds that is needed for that.
Yeah, I don't think we would have trouble getting money out of the fund if we needed it. So, okay, any other conversation on that one? All right, your vote, Dave.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
And I am an aye as well. Very good. Yeah, John?
I'm going to leave the meeting. My apologies. I need to go.
Oh, okay. We're almost done anyway, so
I'm still going.
I gotcha. I hear you. All right.
Good to see you.
Thanks, John.
Take care.
Yep.
You too.
So the only thing that we have remaining was the one that we added to our that I added to the agenda in the new business regarding the way that we operate as a board. And I mean, honestly, I think this meeting has gone pretty well. Dave, you and I both have had some experience now in running online meetings and the etiquette of, signaling if you want to talk and all that sort of stuff seems to go pretty well. Moving beyond that, I do think, Chris brought it up this meeting too, and I thought that was really helpful. I think that it wouldn't be a bad idea for us to revisit what the open meeting law does say about meeting, like what our meeting strategies should be, and also how we can avoid serial meetings. I think that when in the past, when we've had topics come up that have been really, really exciting topics, that we've gotten kind of lax on our observance of the open meeting law, and that's something that we probably need to revisit just so that we can stay a little bit more more legal, maybe.
Official, at least.
Official, yeah. That's a better way of putting it. And then there's been other people other organizations that have had the conversation about, actually how you conduct business in your meetings, following, some understanding of Robert's rules, I've always been told that there's actual Robert's rules, and then there's the shorthand version of that, which is called Bob's guidelines, which tend to be what most organizations use. But I do think that we should have a conversation at that same time about what our structure is for how we're going to hold meetings. If we want to have a conversational, consensus-based meeting feel kind of like what we have, or like what we've, I mean, this meeting at least, practiced, or if there's some system that we can all get behind so that we know what to expect when we're dealing with different issues. That I think would help us get business done a little bit more efficiently, as well as solve potentially some of the problems that we run into with well, you know, I mean, we had 2 people resign from the board just recently, and that's hanging over my head, and I don't really know why. I think I know why, but I don't really know why. But I do think that it would be really helpful for the board's function if we had a conversation about everybody's roles, you know, and how we operate within the scope of the library board, and whose responsibility is what, and all of that sort of thing, so that we all understood where we were operating, and more fully, and were able to do that. So that's not anything to say that we need to do anything dramatic, but it's something that I'd like the board to think about as we go forward, so that we can work on refining how the board interacts as we go forward. Because I think that we do pretty well as a board, but I think we can do better, especially if we're going to have 2 new members coming in. We're going to need to know what our standards are, and how we can keep that going towards a positive conclusion. So there's a lot of chat, but that's a request from me to think about how we could do our business a little bit more efficiently. And also, we'll probably have some more conversations in the future about the different relationships that we have as a board to Amanda as the director, the city as the human resource provider, and the public. So those, and the county as a funder.
Oh, what? Oh.
Yeah. So that's that. I don't really have anything else prepared for that. It's just that was just a little conversation pep talk thing that I wanted to have to make sure that we were all thinking about it. So does anybody else have
Sounds good, Jay. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Does anybody else have
I'm all
anything
for
else
it.
for the meeting? What was that?
I need to learn the hand signal so that I don't keep interrupting people. But I think it's an excellent idea. It's I think once the board has a good idea of what everybody's role is, everything moves much more smoothly. And there's any of the new people coming in, that I thought it was absolutely great. Going to the city, I can look at the library, and when I go to the library from the city, I can get to our bylaws. There's all kinds of information that can be available to a member of the public who wants to be on the library board to find out what we are about. And the more we know what we are about, I think the smoother things go.
Cool. I agree.
Jay, before we finish up, do we need to approve the annual report?
I believe that's already been done.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yep. Amanda, do you have anything else in closing?
Stay healthy, you guys. I'm thinking of all of you.
Yeah, I second that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We don't have any further business, so we are adjourned.
And my apologies.